Hello, this is Ramirez with Tidewater Renaissance Fighting Arts, and today I would like to talk about the Purpleheart Harnischfechten Rondel Dagger. This is it. Uh, the scabbard is something that I made, so if you're curious about it, it doesn't come with this. But if it's something you're interested in, leave a link below and we can talk about how you can either make one or, if you're interested and you want me to make one for you, I can do that. But this is it. This is the Rondel Dagger made by Purpleheart Armory, specifically for Harnischfechten. I do have the cap on it. I will talk a little bit more about that later. This is meant specifically for Harnischfechten. So just so that we're clear, this is way too stiff for regular Blossfechten use. It is very stiff. It has a very thick blade that you're not going to bend anytime soon. It's a fairly wide blade, which is good. It's intended to mock being able to go into the gaps of armor. It does have two rondel discs on it. They're relatively small if you're used to like the Todd Cutler, but I've found that if you put it in a gauntlet and don't bang it on the floor, it will cover that gap where your glove would be and help so that you have the rondel, then you would have the metal of your gauntlet. And that works to the back side as well. It's a fairly basic, it's not too terribly elaborate. It is really shiny, but no fancy engraving. It does have a brass pin, I guess, at the end. I don't know if this is screw on or not. I think that's just the end of the tang. But it is a very, very nice, good size. I will leave the specs kind of below from Purpleheart. It does, when it doesn't have this tip, it has a rounded edge, kind of like if you can imagine like the kind of round that a quarter would be. This is entirely blunt, so there is absolutely no sharp edges on it. As I said, very, very stiff. You buy Decoven a cord, you should have a cap for it. This blunt is not the standard Purpleheart Armory like longsword blunt. It's actually the blunt for their canes. They do sell that on their website along with this. It is a separate thing. Recently, I was at a armored tournament where they did not require the tip. I'm not a fan because the idea was to get under plates, that they didn't want this big bulky tip on there. But by the Decoven Accords, you're supposed to, because this is less than an eighth of an inch as far as the width here. This can get into a lot of places, and yes, it's blunt, but by the Accords, you're supposed to have a blunt on it. You're supposed to have a width that's at least 3/8 of an inch, and this does not qualify for that without that blunt on there. It is important to note that this is the cane blunt, so if you have a bunch of longsword blunts at home, it will not fit it. Also, when you're attaching a cane blunt to it, it's important that you put tape on the actual blade, then put the cap on it, then tape the cap to the tape. If you don't do that, you have a high likelihood this is just going to pop off. So I do need to bring that up. But as far as its handling as a Harnischfechten blade, I think it's great. We haven't had a lot of good options for rondel daggers, and so people have been improvising stuff. The fact that this is, I think, $35 on Purpleheart makes it extremely cost effective, and those of us in the Harnischfechten world know very few things are cost effective in Harnischfechten. So it really is a really great bargain, I feel. I bought two of these for my club. One of my other armored club mates bought the other one. This is mine. And fits well in the hand. It's not so long that you're, trying to grab around. It's a good length. Very, very stiff. I feel like one of the complaints on other Rondel models is that they have too much flex. My original Rondel dagger from Darkwood had a lot of flex to it, and it did cause that people weren't sure if they had gotten enough pressure. You will not worry about that with this dagger. So as I said, I would recommend it if you are doing Harnischfechten. Remember, this is not a Blossfechten tool. It's way too stiff for that, but for what it's intended for in Harnischfechten, I think is very effective. I think you definitely, by Decoven Accord, you need that cap on there. Though, as I said, some clubs, apparently in my neck of the woods, Northern Virginia, Maryland, are using it without, so that they can go through and into gaps and maybe look a little more historically accurate without having that on there. I would warn against that because you have a lot of potential, even if you're wearing, let's say, a protective plate on a male standard. Without that, this is thin enough to get under such a protective gear, so I would not recommend you do that. But once again, it's kind of up to you, but by the Accords, you should have a tip on there. So that is my review of the Purpleheart Harnischfechten Rondel Dagger. If you do have additional questions, if you're curious about how to make a scabbard for it, this scabbard, just fairly basic. I've added a nice thong attachment to it, so I can just tie this to my belt. Rule of thumb, just kind of a funny side note, try to tie your Rondel dagger a little further back and not as the front, as your opponents in Harnischfechten can try to grab this from you. And I did have one person do that in the last Harnischfechten tournament I was in. So just to let you know, little fun. Once again, my name is Ramirez. I'm with Tidewater Renaissance Fighting Arts. We're based out of Norfolk, Virginia. I'll leave a link below about our club, and I will see you in the next video.